faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally talking about books. Today, I'll interpret the book When Conscience Sleeps for You. The subtitle is Recognizing the Sociopath Next Door. Conscience is something we all know. For many people, thinking and acting based on conscience is as natural as breathing air. When we see someone close suffer injustice, we naturally feel indignant for them. Seeing compatriots on the news hit by natural disasters, we feel sympathy too, and some even donate money or goods to help. But have you ever thought there are some people in this world who can't feel conscience? These people are what the book title calls sociopaths. In psychiatry, the formal term for antisocial personality is antisocial personality disorder, an uncorrectable personality defect. The author Martha Stout believes sociopaths' core issue is lacking conscience. Moral rights and wrongs mean nothing to them. Martha Stout is a renowned American psychiatrist at Harvard Medical School. She's treated hundreds with psychological trauma, mostly controlled or abused by sociopaths. This experience made Martha see the need to discuss conscience's importance and what happens when it sleeps. In this book, Martha combines latest science and sociopath cases to explore conscience's origin and value.
She also hopes people can use this book to protect themselves from sociopaths' harm.
After publication, this book hit the New York Times bestseller list. Oprah magazine says this book affirms our innate empathy and is super inspiring. The Boston Herald praised it for sounding the alarm, urging conscientious folks to stay vigilant and spot cruel people around. Next, I'll break down the book's main content into 3 parts. First, what is conscience? Second, in what situations does conscience sleep? Third, how to deal with sociopaths. Let's start with part 1. What is conscience? The author defines conscience as a sense of obligation based on emotion. Here, emotion mainly means love and sympathy for others. Some might think judging if someone has conscience is about whether they'll help others. But the author believes that conscience is a specific emotional motivation. Conscience makes people do good, but not everything that makes people do good is necessarily conscience. The book gives an example. A lawyer named Joe is driving to catch a flight for a business trip. He's attending an important business negotiation. On the way, Joe suddenly remembers that he forgot to prepare food and water for his dog. If he doesn't go back, the dog will starve to death by the time he returns days later. But if he goes home now, he'll miss the business negotiation, which could have a big impact on his career. After some inner struggle, Joe ultimately decides to go home to prepare the dog food and water. Many people might think Joe is a conscientious person, but the author argues that based on this description alone, we don't know if what made him decide was conscience. Maybe Joe chose to go home because he worried the dog's cries of hunger would be heard by neighbors, making him look like someone who doesn't care about his pet's life, facing huge social pressure. Or maybe Joe just didn't want to see the dog's corpse, which disgusted and frightened him. All these motivations could lead Joe to do a good deed, but they stem from his self-interest, without considering the dog's feelings. The author believes these can't be called conscience. Conscience is built on emotional connections with others. If Joe chose to go home because he loves his dog, and the thought of the dog being hungry and thirsty during that time made him feel terrible,
Right.
believing he had a responsibility to prevent it,
Right.
that would be conscience. So how does conscience arise? Evolutionists believe conscience is a result of natural selection, which occurs at multiple levels. At the group level, if a trait helps the group survive, it will be preserved. Conscience makes us help each other and avoid harming one another, which is certainly beneficial for group survival. At the genetic level, genes aim to reproduce themselves, and conscience is a mechanism set by genes. This mechanism ensures we don't ignore people who share genes with us. So we show stronger love, sympathy, and sense of duty towards people with shared genes, i.e. blood relatives, which increases their chances of survival and reproduction, enhancing the likelihood of passing on the same genes to descendants. These positive feelings towards relatives also influence our attitude towards strangers, facilitating division of labor and cooperation with others, avoiding conflicts. Therefore, whether at the group or genetic level, conscience aids survival and reproduction, so natural selection preserves it. The author believes conscience's greatest significance for individuals is letting us experience love, adding extraordinariness to ordinary life, and bringing profound happiness. You can watch your child drift into dreamland, your heart swelling with awe and gratitude. After loved ones pass away, they live forever in your heart. You'll form deep friendships and share joyful moments, all wonderful emotional experiences. Conscience also makes us willingly give to others, which similarly brings happiness. 2 U.S. researchers interviewed 23 moral exemplars from various fields, finding they shared core beliefs. Helping others is right and their inescapable duty. Supported by this conviction, they could enjoy work optimistically and overcome hardships. Moreover, conscience isn't just their motivation, it embodies who they are. One exemplar said, "My actions and feelings every moment constitute my being. I can't separate myself from what I do." Researchers believe conscience harmonizes personal desires, moral goals, and self-identity. People feel immense fulfillment doing what they want and deem meaningful. All right, let's summarize part 1. Conscience is an emotion-based sense of duty. It aids survival for groups and genes. For individuals, it lets us experience love and happiness.
Yet conscience isn't fixed. It can fall asleep in certain situations.
Next, in part 2, we'll explore what causes loss of conscience. The author argues that physical and mental states can affect conscience in ordinary people. For instance, when feverish and nauseous, self-concern may override sympathy for others' suffering. Beyond this, the author focuses on 2 specific situations. First is moral exclusion. Conscience relies on love and sympathy, yet we don't feel these for everyone. If we consider certain people as outsiders, unworthy of concern, we exclude them from our moral circle. No matter how we harm them, our conscience remains indifferent. For example, we see no issue with violently punishing murderers or terrorists. They deserve it. But sometimes, many innocent people are also devalued as outsiders, like Black people, Native Americans, homosexuals, the poor, etc. This list could go on and on. Any minority group in society may face unfair treatment or even life-threatening actions from the majority. Many tragic genocides have been triggered by moral exclusion. The second situation is obedience to authority. In 1961, Yale psychology professor Stanley Milgram conducted a famous experiment. He told participants that to study shock punishment's effect on learning, they must question a learner seated in an electric chair. If the learner answered wrong, participants had to press a button to deliver shocks. For each incorrect answer, researchers instructed increasing shock intensity. The true purpose was testing when participants would stop shocking. Researchers tested 40 participants, including teachers, civil servants, engineers.
Results showed 25 out of 40 never disobeyed the researcher.
Despite the learner's screams begging for mercy, they increased voltage to maximum. Of the remaining 15, 9 only stopped after reaching very high intensity. Over subsequent years, Milgram tested nearly 1,000 subjects with similar results. Milgram concluded that obedience transfers all responsibility to authority, removing personal moral accountability. This paralysis of personal responsibility puts conscience to sleep, enabling ordinary people to harm others unflinchingly.
However, ordinary people's conscience only occasionally sleeps. It functions normally most of the time.
Whereas sociopaths have abnormal emotional processing, unable to form bonds or imagine others' feelings. Thus, their conscience is perpetually absent. Neuroscientists have conducted a series of studies on sociopaths. They found that these individuals' cerebral cortex processes emotional stimuli differently from normal people. Normal brains are very sensitive to emotional words. And, for example, researchers showed ordinary people 2 words. One was pain, the other table. EEG scans showed that normal brains recognize pain faster than table. The brainwave response was also stronger, as if pain was more important and meaningful. But sociopaths are different. Experiments found that their recognition speed for emotional words is basically the same as for non-emotional words. Words like kiss or cry seem no different from sit or catalog to them. Further research found that, compared to normal people, sociopaths have more blood flow to the temporal lobe area when discerning emotional words. When we try to solve a challenging intellectual problem, blood flow to this area increases to focus attention. In other words, for sociopaths, the physiological reaction when discerning emotional words is similar to doing math problems.
Due to this physiological difference, sociopaths cannot experience emotions related to others, nor form emotional connections, and naturally feel no sense of obligation to others. Or,
To clarify, the emotions sociopaths lack are mainly advanced interpersonal ones, like love and sympathy. They can still experience other emotions, such as physical pain or pleasure, and achieving goals or facing setbacks can trigger impulsive emotions like anger or excitement. The author believes these emotions are primitive neural reactions from older brain regions, not regulated by subjective consciousness. Regarding the causes of antisocial personality, scientists have no definitive conclusions.
Current research suggests it's related to both innate genetics and environmental factors.
First, on genetics. Psychologists long ago understood that many aspects of personality are genetically linked. Studies on twins show that most measurable personality traits like introversion, extroversion, neuroticism, empathy, etc., are about 35% to 50% innate. The same results appear in studies on antisocial personality. There's a study in the US that ran for over 30 years called the Texas Adoption Project. This project tracked and studied over 500 adopted children. Researchers compared personality differences between the adopted children, their biological parents, and adoptive parents.
They ultimately found that compared to adoptive parents, children's antisocial personality indicators aligned more closely with biological parents.
This study estimated antisocial personality heritability at about 54%. Now let's discuss environmental factors. When considering environmental influences on personality, many first think of childhood abuse. But the author notes there's insufficient evidence linking childhood abuse to antisocial personality. Moreover, common consequences of childhood abuse like depression and anxiety are less prevalent among sociopaths. The author favors the view that social culture impacts antisocial personality more than specific parenting styles. While sociopaths exist across all cultures and eras, evidence shows they're less common in certain societies. For example, in East Asian countries, like Japan and China, sociopaths are relatively rare. Studies show prevalence in Taiwan, China is about 0.03% to 0.14%, while Western averages are 4%, especially in the U.S., where rates keep climbing. A U.S. National Institute of Mental Health report noted antisocial personality rates nearly doubled among young Americans from 1976 to 1991. Many scholars believe America's individualist culture encourages controlling others for gain, fostering antisocial behavior. The author concurs with this perspective. He argues that, unlike American culture, East Asia's collectivist cultures emphasize inherent interdependence between people. This value system forms conscience's foundation. For those unable to feel emotional connections due to psychological defects, collectivist values help cognitively rather than emotionally understand relational responsibilities, preventing antisocial behavior.
lacking conscience, sociopaths display distinct behavioral characteristics.
The author highlights two common traits. First is habitual deception and control of others. Relationships are crucial in our lives. Parents work tirelessly for children. Lovers feel down due to emotional conflicts. Most dreams, joys, worries, and sorrows involve others. But sociopaths view relationships like playing chess, calmly treating everyone as pawns. For personal gain, sociopaths use various control methods, disregarding others' feelings or rights. Specific control tactics vary by individual. If a sociopath has violent tendencies, they may commit violent acts, including murder, though rare, as antisocial personality doesn't inherently link to violence. Sociopaths more commonly manipulate through deception, threats, and psychological control. The book introduces Skip, a sociopath who was charming and clever since childhood, skilled at pleasing adults.
Secretly, Skip bullied his sister and enjoyed torturing animals, like stuffing firecrackers into frogs' mouths to watch them explode.
Skip later earned an MBA and joined a mining equipment company. Through intelligence and deceit, he rose to become international division president and married a billionaire's daughter. Outwardly a family-oriented success, this was all disguise. He saw life as a game, gaining superiority through deception.
What? Skip influenced major financial decisions for personal profit.
He viewed his boss as a fool to be manipulated and felt nothing for his wife while cheating openly. He married solely to leverage his father-in-law's connections. Note, high IQ sociopaths like Skip are rare. Most have average intelligence but still inflict great pain.
The author presents another case. Doreen, a covetous-type sociopath.
These individuals feel life treats them unfairly while being generous to others. They balance this injustice by plundering others or secretly ruining their lives.
This makes them feel powerful, able to control others' lives.
Take Doreen, for example. She's a psychologist who, out of intense jealousy towards her colleague Jackie for being beautiful, kind-hearted, and smart, deliberately misled Jackie's patient. That patient already had persecution delusions, and as a result, they misunderstood Jackie. They were about to be discharged, but their condition worsened, and they had to be readmitted. This destructive behavior gave Doreen great satisfaction because Jackie would blame herself for the patient's deterioration, and other colleagues would think less of Jackie. The second common characteristic of sociopaths is irresponsibility. In most cases, sociopaths refuse to take responsibility for their actions and consequences.
For instance, take Skip mentioned earlier. Once, he forced his secretary to sit on his lap. She tried to resist, but Skip broke her arm.
Later, the secretary filed legal charges against Skip. Regarding this accusation, Skip commented,
He's crazy. He broke his own arm. He wanted to fight me. What a stupid bitch.
The author believes that sociopaths lack self-reflection. They never see anything wrong with themselves. Moreover, they believe they are superior to others and often discuss how naive and absurd ordinary people's guilt feelings are. They also wonder why many people are unwilling to control others, even though it could benefit them.
Some sociopaths think that everyone is as shameless as they are. They believe they are the frank and honest ones, while others pretend to have a fictional thing called conscience.
People who think this way naturally can't take responsibility for their actions. Additionally, the American Psychiatric Association, an authoritative body in psychiatry, summarized 7 characteristics of antisocial personality disorder in their Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. These include the habitual deception, control of others, and irresponsibility we mentioned earlier.
The remaining 5 characteristics include failure to conform to social norms, irritability with aggression, inability to plan ahead and impulsivity, disregard for safety of self or others, and lack of remorse after harming others.
A person must exhibit at least 3 of these 7 traits to be clinically diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. The author notes that while sociopaths may seem free from conscience's constraints, they actually experience low happiness due to several reasons. First, they can't form emotional bonds, no intimate partners or close friends, leaving them emotionally empty and bored. To seek stimulation, many become alcoholics or addicts.
A 1990 study in JAMA found about 75% of sociopaths have alcohol dependence and 50% abuse drugs, severely harming their physical and mental health. And then,
Second, sociopath self-focus creates intense self-awareness, making them hypersensitive to every minor discomfort. Many develop hypochondria. Even with normal checkups, they believe they have illnesses and torment themselves with imagined diseases. This keeps them in constant anxious distress. The author adds that while sociopaths may gain power or wealth short-term through deceit, when someone constantly oppresses, deceives, hurts, and controls others, their misdeeds eventually surface, provoking collective backlash.
They might provoke the wrong person who bravely exposes them, or victims unite for revenge after enduring prolonged exploitation.
Take Skip. The SEC charged him in 2003 for fraud in business dealings. All right, let's summarize Part 2. Moral exclusion and obedience to authority can temporarily suppress ordinary people's conscience.
But sociopaths' conscience remains perpetually dormant due to genetics and culture, unable to connect emotionally or imagine others' feelings.
Behaviorally, they exhibit control and irresponsibility. Now, in Part 3, we'll discuss how to handle sociopaths. First, it needs to be emphasized that determining who has antisocial personality disorder requires professional psychiatrists who consider multiple factors, like the person's history, to make an accurate judgment.
ordinary folks thinking someone matches the traits we mentioned and labeling them a sociopath is totally unreliable.
For instance, some husbands always try to control their wives and shirk family responsibilities, but their motive might not be lack of conscience. Maybe it's childhood trauma driving them to seek security through control. These people can still hurt others but aren't necessarily sociopaths. Or take others who seem irresponsible, mess up, and argue stubbornly. What drives them could be insecurity, fear of being judged for mistakes. Similarly, those committing extreme acts or crimes aren't all sociopaths, and sociopaths aren't all evil monsters. The author believes sociopaths' behaviors vary widely based on their desires. Some sociopaths are obsessed with chasing power and money. Like Skip might cause huge harm, while others just want to live without too much hassle. Then their behavior might just be slacking off all day. Plus, sociopaths can be quite charming, making it hard to see their true selves. This charm comes from the danger sociopaths embody. Sociopaths are born risk takers. They often make unconventional choices, like quitting jobs to fly to Paris or speeding on highways. This makes ordinary people see their carefree attitude as cool and worthy of admiration, dropping their guard. Meanwhile, even though sociopaths can't feel others' emotions, they learn to fake it by observing people or through books and movies.
Sociopaths can act enthusiastic and loving depending on the situation.
When questioned or pressured, they often play the victim, shedding crocodile tears, because they know conscientious people are moved by tears, softening up and believing their lies. Or in the opposite scenario, when challenged, sociopaths might act all righteous indignation or angry to scare off accusers. Since it's hard to identify sociopaths, does that mean we can't protect ourselves? Not at all. Ultimately, our goal is to avoid being deceived and controlled. Regardless of whether someone's a sociopath, if you spot deception or control attempts, respond promptly. The author offers several strategies to counter others' control. Here are 4 actionable ones. First, question authority. Don't be fooled by titles. Sociopaths often use credentials to boost credibility. Take Doreen. She exploited her doctor title to deceive patients and colleagues. Actually, she had no medical license. She got the job because 2 experts she seduced wrote recommendations. So judge people by their words and actions, not titles like doctor or CEO. Those can mislead. Daily interactions help us develop intuition for spotting good and bad people. If someone's words or actions make you anxious, trust that gut feeling, no matter how authoritative they seem.
Second suggestion, express anger.
Many parents, especially with girls, teach silence is golden. Suppress emotions, avoid conflict, but feeling anger toward wrongdoing is natural for anyone with conscience. Value that anger, express it immediately. Tell offenders, your behavior's despicable, stop. This protects both others and yourself. Constant emotional suppression robs courage to fight back against unfair treatment. Third suggestion, beware flattery. Complaints feel great. We all love them. Manipulators excel at using flattery to build rapport and gain trust. If someone constantly showers you with excessive praise, stay alert and question their motives. The fourth suggestion is 3 strikes and you're out. When building a relationship, use the 3 strikes rule to test their trustworthiness.
One lie or broken promise might be a misunderstanding.
Twice. Lies or broken promises are a serious warning sign.
If they repeatedly lie and break promises, they're a deceitful fraud.
Whether they're a sociopath or not, end that relationship immediately.
All right, summarizing part 3, ordinary people struggle to identify sociopaths. Still, we can avoid control by questioning authority, expressing anger, watching for flattery, and using the 3 strikes test. With that, we've nearly covered the sociopath next door. For most, conscience seems ordinary, yet it protects humanity and gives life meaning.
But not all have conscience. Dealing with them requires time revealing true colors, plus courage to question and express anger at their actions.
As the author says, living well is the best revenge against sociopaths. All right, that concludes our interpretation of the Sociopath Next Door.
Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.